Hey guys, I'm Susan Thomas, and today I want to teach you how to make your own clasps. Okay, so one of the most important parts of jewelry is going to be, how do you end it, right? Well, it's a lot of fun to do something different and make it your own by making your own clasps. So today I'm going to teach you how to make several different types. We're going to start with an S hook, and then we're going to do a J hook, and then, super exciting, I'm going to teach you how to make a toggle. If you guys like this video, don't forget to ring that bell so you can be notified anytime a new video comes out. All right, so we're gonna get started making some clasps. I've got some tools and supplies here for us to work with. First of all, I'm gonna be using 16 gauge wire today. This is a plated wire. Personally prefer to use maybe a sterling or a copper or a brass. But you can use plated wire for this. You just have to be a little bit more careful with your hammering. This is 16 gauge, which is the absolute finest gauge I recommend to make clasps with. You're going to need some basic tools. I'm going to use 2 chain nose pliers because we're using a heavier gauge wire. And I am going to use my handy little flush cutter. I will also be using something called a wire rounder, which is a little cup burr here that's going to round off the ends of my wire. And I'm going to be using my AccuLoop plier, which is marked with millimeter sizes of loops from 2 all the way up to 8 millimeter. It's a great plier. You'll love it. You should grab one for sure. And then I'm also going to be using my wrap and tap plier, which is another type of a bail shaping plier that makes larger loops and bails. And then I also have a file and a bench block, 2 essentials for metalworkers. Okay, so let's get started with something simple. I'm going to start you off with what's called an S clasp. This is an S clasp. I just have it on this little necklace right here. This is just a necklace that was made out of one continuous strand of fire opal beads, and so it didn't have a clasp on it. And it's not easy to add a clasp to something like that, but if you have one of these S clasps, you can take these continuous strands and you can just put it on like this, and then you can wear it as a necklace. Kind of cool. All right, so I'm gonna put that to the side, and I'm going to grab my AccuLoop plier, and I'm just gonna take a little bit of 16 gauge wire, and I'm gonna work right off the spool of the 16 gauge because that way I waste the least amount of wire. And you saw I just trimmed a little bit off the edge, and that's because I'm just flush cutting the end of that wire. You always want to make sure you flush cut. And if you want to get really super professional on these, you can take your wire rounder and you're just going to round the end of that wire, just like that. There we go. So now it's nice and smooth. Then I'm going to use the 2 millimeter mark on my AccuLoop plier, and I'm going to make a little loop at the end of the wire. And then I'm going to go all the way over here to that 7 millimeter, and I'm going to wrap that into kind of an S shape. And then I'm going to grab it on the other side. Same thing with that 7 millimeter and bring it into an S shape in the other direction. So it looks kind of like that. And I'm going to trim off the extra wire. And if you're careful, if you just kind of bring it right to the very end of this side of the S, it should end up right about the same size. So then I'm going to take that, so I'm going to trim it up just a little bit more because it's just a little bit long. And then I'm going to take the 2 millimeter loop on my AccuLoop plier, and I'm just going to bring that into a loop on the other side, and then I have a cute little S clasp. Kind of cool. All right, so that's one, and then let me show you how to make a J hook. I've got 2 different designs here for my J hook, and I use those on lots of different things. This is just a little leather bracelet that I made. I made this actually in a clasp, but see, there's a little J hook right there. Just real simple little clasp, and it has just a jump ring on the other side. So what you're going to do this is, once again, 16 gauge wire. I'm going to flush cut the end. And I'm going to use that 2 millimeter bail on my AccuLoop plier, and I'm going to wrap that into a little loop like so, and then I'm going to go over to that 7 millimeter, and I'm going to wrap this around, and then I'm just going to press in a little bit with my thumb to give it a little curve and pull out, so see how it kind of gives it a nice shape. And then I'm going to trim this. It looks nicer if you trim this a little bit longer than this little loop that you made. Just found that just looks nicer. I've tried them the other way and they just aren't as pretty. And then on this, you're gonna flip this out into a little bit of an angle, and then you definitely wanna use your wire rounder on the end of this because that's rough, and you don't want that on the edge of your clasp. So we're gonna get that wire rounder out and round that out, like so. So this is a great example of a clasp that looks good if you kind of hammer it a little bit, and also this will harden it up a little bit too. Now, if you're using a plated wire, don't go crazy, just kind of gently hammer it. But if you're using sterling or copper, you can really put a lot of texture on this. So I'm just gonna hammer this just along that little curve right there, just to harden it up a little bit, give it a little bit of texture. And then finally, all I usually do with these is I just have a little jump ring for the other side. I do always make my own jump ring. So just on your AccuLoop plier, just find that 4mm and wrap this around like so, and then flush cut it with your flush cutter. So you want to make sure that you cut this way, and then when you turn it over, you turn your flush cutter over and cut this way so that both of those flush ends hit together. And we'll just close that up with our handy chain nose pliers, like so. And then that guy just goes on there like that. Now here's another example of a way to do a J-hook. If you want to have a little bit of an embellishment, especially if you're using plated wire and you can't do a lot of hammering, or you can't do any oxidizing or anything, you might want to have a cute little embellishment like this on there. And to do that, what you want to do is start by making a loop at the beginning of your clasp. So I'm going to use my AccuLoop plier again, just like I would use it as a round nose plier, and I'm going to bend that back, and I'm just going to use that. Let's go with the 3mm. And I'm gonna make a loop at the end. See what I did there? And then I'm gonna grab that with my chain nose plier, and I'm gonna take this piece of wire and I'm gonna wrap it around 2 times to finish that off. And then trim with your flush cutter, and then just take, that's gonna have a little bit of roughness right there, but you should be able to take your chain nose plier and really press that in. And so then we're going to finish this off by taking this and just putting a little bit of a bend in the wire, not a lot, just a little. And I'm gonna use that 7mm spot on my AccuLoop plier and wrap this around. And then once again, see how I'm kind of pressing into the wire to give it a little bit of a curve. Like that, open it up. And like I said, same thing, just it looks a little cuter if you make it a little bit longer. Also a little more secure. Just trim that. And then I am going to use my wire rounder to round the end of that. Like so, so that's smooth. And this one's another one where I just usually use a little jump ring to finish it off. All right, so the last thing I'm gonna teach you how to make is a toggle clasp, and I've got that on this bracelet. And a toggle clasp is gonna be pretty secure, and it's good for a bracelet. And so I like it on these little cha-cha bracelets that I make. And this is a handmade cha-cha bracelet and then a handmade clasp. And it's a really good, secure way to end something, and it looks really nice too. So let me show you how to do that. There's 2 parts to a toggle clasp, and there's some very important things that you need to know about making a toggle clasp that's gonna make you successful or not successful, depending on whether you listen, I guess, right? Here we go. So this is called a wrap and tap plier, and you see it has my name on it, and that's because people always try to take this tool from me because it's a great tool. It's got 3 different sizes. I believe it starts 13mm and goes all the way up to 20mm. And I'm gonna start with that 13mm to make a large loop on that plier. So there's my large loop. Once again, this is 16 gauge, absolutely the minimum gauge I would recommend using to do stuff like this. So I'm just gonna trim that off right about right there. And then I'm going to take trim this off here, and I'm gonna take my AccuLoop plier, and I'm gonna make a loop at this other side. Just with my 2mm, I'm going to make a loop like so, and you can kind of overlap it and then trim it if you're still a little bit too long. So I did that, and I'm just gonna trim it up. And then finish that off so it's real pretty. So you see what I'm doing here, I'm making the actual toggle piece. And then for this one, I am gonna do just a little bit of hammering on this. This is a plated wire once again, so I'm not gonna go crazy. I just wanna harden it up just a little bit. If you were using a sterling or a copper, you know, or anything like a brass, go ahead and hammer away. And now you need to make your toggle bar. And this is the part that you really need to listen to me on, because there's some really important things about toggles that people don't know. So first of all, I'm just gonna pull a piece of wire. I'm just gonna grab about 3 inches of my 16 gauge wire, and I'm going to use my AccuLoop to make just a bar with a circle in the center, like so. All right. And then this is the important part. When you make a toggle, you always want to make sure that when you hold the circle like this and that little center loop comes all the way to the side, you never want the bar to be able to slip through the toggle, going in either direction. So this is how I'm going to determine the length of my bar. If you have a bar, like if I came to here, if I was able to pull to here and that bar slipped through there, this toggle would fall off all the time and it would drive you crazy. So what you want to do is you want to pull that circle all the way to the edge, the little circle, all the way to the edge of your big circle that you made on your toggle, and then you want to give yourself a couple millimeters past the edge of the toggle loop before you trim your wire. And then you're going to do the same thing in the other direction. So I'm going to push it up against the edge of the toggle, and then I'm going to trim this out there. All right, and then on these guys, what I like to do is I like to kind of embellish them a little bit and add just a little touch of metal, like I did on this guy right here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire around the end, and then I'm going to hammer it and put a little wire embellishment on it. So now I'm just going to make a paddle on the end, like so. And then for my little accent, I'm just going to use a little bit of 24 gauge wire. So I just take my wire. Always give yourself a little handle like this to hold on to, and then I twist as many times as I want to. I'm going to go 3, 4 on that side, and then I'm going to kind of unwrap my handle out of the way there and tighten this side up, just like so, and trim off the extra. And I always trim everything off on the same side, so you kind of have a front and a back. Or something like this, you always want to make sure you really press down those little ends with your chain nose. So that side and then this side, and I'm going to press that in. So see, a little accent like that. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. So that's fun. That's a really, really just a great way to end your piece. Just a, kind of something a little bit different, and like I said, it really adds that artisan's touch to your piece, and I think it kind of brings up the level of your design. So there you go, lots of different ideas for you to make your own clasps. All right, so there you go. That's how you make your own clasps. Do not forget some of these tools and supplies that you need. I used a 16 gauge wire to make my clasps, okay? And I told you I don't recommend anything any lighter than 16 gauge. That's perfect. And then I embellished with some 24 gauge as well. As far as tools are concerned, I used my AccuLoop plier. I also used my wrap and tap plier. These are two different bail making type pliers that work great for this type of stuff. I used 2 pairs of chain nose pliers to open and close jump rings and kind of squish things down. And then I used a flush cutter and this is just a flat file. I used just a little bit, and I also used my wire rounder quite a bit on this project. And then I almost forgot my hammer and my bench block. Thanks so much for watching. If you guys would like to pick up some supplies like the ones we worked with today, check out the links down below. Which clasp would you use on your project? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that bell, and we'll see you again next time.